disgusting and despicable that we are standing idly by while Carrie Irvin Ross goes on TV and sheds her fake tears. If she actually shed those tears for real, she'd be doing something about the case that she's just perpetuating and growing. The conservative estimate is about 11,000 children in care. That was a few years ago. By now, at the rate that it goes up, I'm pretty sure
I think it's over 14 now.
I'm pretty sure it is. And there is an insane amount of discrimination in CFS that is shown clearly when you see 90% of the children in care are First Nations. And that goes back to the Indian Act in 1876, where they basically acknowledged First Nations people as nothing but a bunch of scavengers and, savages. And that, it actually says that right in the documentation, that basically they're not people. But this is a problem that we have when we're talking about human rights here in Canada. We look at things, for example, like the Charter of Rights. The Charter of Rights, unfortunately, and I wish it were true, but the Charter of Rights doesn't actually protect any of our rights. The thing about the Charter of Rights is it's a corporate document that was written in order to give us this idea of our rights, but they don't actually have to go by it. They don't have to abide by it. The Charter of Rights is literally and simply just the government saying that we allow you these rights when it's most convenient for us. We don't have an actual constitution that bases our rights to our natural rights and basically says that government can't infringe them. Us here in Canada, we're given it by government. We're not protected by government from them being taken. We're given it. So that's the problem. Freedom comes from within, not from outside. And the problem we have is we keep looking at things like the Charter of Rights. We're not going to get anywhere with the Charter of Rights. I'm sorry, it's not actual natural law.
And I agree.
It's simply the government saying that you can have this in our...
But how are we protected when we go to court? The court says, CFS, you have to do this, and they don't do this, and this. They don't follow what the courts have ordered them to do, and there's no consequences to it.
The government's a giant corporation that makes their own rules, and when they break those rules, they just make new ones. That's all the government is here in Canada.
We use these people to fund that corporation.
Yes.
I'm very take this very seriously, and I'm very frightened about not only the erosion of rights, as Josh says. They're not. We don't really have rights. People don't understand that. And the police can walk into your house and they can do whatever they want to you, and they did it to me. Like I said, I've never had a criminal record in my life, and the fact that you walked in my house, 4 police officers, look how small I am. I'm not a violent person, and what they did to me was disgraceful. But the other thing I want to say here too as well is that not only does CFS not acknowledge their mistakes or what they're doing, CFS covers them up, and that's criminal. And what I don't understand is, why do they not face consequences, and why does CFS have more power than the Prime Minister? Because they do. They can do whatever they want.
And we need to watch out for those that come and use the issue in order to, for example, demagogue their personal platform. I've seen recently that Rana Bokhari says that she wants to cut the number of children in care in half, but has no actual plan to do that. So I question that very intently, and I don't see that actually happening. We have to watch out for certain politicians.
I have to say this again, because I was with my transgender. They are part of our community. They are part of us, and we love you so much, and so grateful you're here. This transgender man, I have to emphasize this, that the minute that CFS found out that they tried to put someone else's name into the child abuse registry and what they had done to him, they had to drop his charges with prejudice, meaning that he had the right to speak out about it. And they are secretly, CFS, in order to cover their asses, are writing legislation right now to teach social workers sensitivity training regarding transgender people and their children. That's how they're trying to get out of dealing with the fact that they have ruined so many lives. They don't give a damn about transgender people and their families. They don't give a damn about anyone. And I'm going to say to my Aboriginal brothers and sisters, my First Nations, I am a political person, but I'm not stupid. And I'm well aware that this parade of Aboriginal people that they are putting into these seats, they're using them. They're using my friend. Don't use people as
Pawns.
pawns. And don't try to fool the people, because we're not stupid.
Yeah, and looking at the NDP cabinet, the fact that when we go and approach them, they flip us off. Andrew Swan flipped us off when we asked him, when we showed him that picture right there. We showed him that picture. She said, look what happened to my son. This is what CFS does to children.
This is what CFS did to my son.
And what does Andrew Swan do? He flips us off. He flips us off. We go to Greg Selinger, he says we're working on it. We question him again, he says we're working on it. We question him a dozen more times, he just keeps saying we're working on it while the number of children in care keeps going up. I believe him when he says he's working on it. He's working on building the number of children in care and building profit. That's all he's focused on. Greg Selinger doesn't give a damn about any children. He never has. If he cared about children, then he would be devastated at what's happening under his government, and he'd be reversing things.
From the hospital.
One baby.
It's actually two. They say it's one, and as you say, we 11,000, 10,000. You could triple that, because I know for statistics, just what they put out there, they have 400 missing CFS kids right now.
The main statistic is that the majority of the kids in CFS care, when they come out, end up criminals or homeless or alcoholics or drug addicts. This is insanity that we're putting up with this. 100 years ago, if this was happening, there'd be riots in the streets, there'd be torches at this door. We have become so apathetic as a people that we have just laid down and let this happen. This couldn't have happened 100 years ago. That's how far we've gone. That's how far we've been lost.
I raised that at a forum I was at the other night for St. John's, and I said, this is the reality of children when they come out of care.
Mm-hmm.
And I was corrected by my NDP counterpart. And I said, no, this is a fact. When these kids are not given a chance, they're not given any guidance, any love or compassion, they're just punted around, they're treated like a commodity, a piece of property, their chances of flourishing are in the single digits.
And this is our future.
That is our future. They are our future.
It's all about dependence, and actually Randy mentioned there the whole globalist impact on this. This is about dependence. If you are able to basically destroy society, destroy the morality of society,
destroy
if you're able
families,
to basically control people, take children as your own, as a government, then that tells you that the government's trying to make people dependent. The easiest way to enslave the populace is to basically take up the children, raise them terribly in terrible conditions. They have kids, they take those kids as well. Those guys, just goes on forever, like I said, and it's all about dependence. People talk about First Nations people on the streets. Well, like I said, 60% of the children that come through CFS end up on the streets. That's a statistic that comes from the RAC that came directly from the government here. I'm looking at something that is basically just trying to systematically destroy the individual so that they depend on government, so that they bow down to government, so that
using shame as a tool.
Absolutely. They want First Nations cultures to be destroyed. They want this to happen, because if that happens, then they just keep coming back and they keep dependent, and the government keeps providing their tiny little help for this horrible, wide, vast issue, and it just keeps going on forever and ever.
Let's bring in the word genocide, okay? Let's start being serious here, because that's exactly what's going on. The children that are being taken, and we talk to foster children all the time and hear about the food that they eat. The fact, like I said, what's going on across the river is being highly ignored, except for certain individuals that went on their own to help. I think, yes, I think they want them to be dependent, but I really want to be perfectly honest and say this is a genocide and they're doing it on purpose.
Yes.
And we have these diabetic rates that are through the roof for Aboriginal people. We have poverty. We have their children 90% in care. It goes on and on and on. And this is not a coincidence. It's not one issue. It's a billion issues. And they are succeeding. And I also want to put this picture up of my son, and I'm going to do it again. He is a mentally ill child that I adopted from CFS when he was 3 years old. And this is a result of falling off of a bicycle. And they gave him some ice and told him to go to bed. And I asked him to send a selfie. I was in the country, he was in the city. I wanted to see this is what he looked like, okay?
How long ago did this happen?
This happened, about a year, less than
About a year ago,
about a
yeah.
year ago, yeah.
And he had a concussion, and they told him to go to
before
bed.
critical
Yeah, and so
incident
we, of
reporting.
course, rushed down to the treatment home, took him to the emergency, and the doctor said if he would have went to sleep, he wouldn't have woken up. He had a concussion. And this is what he looked like. How could you be so stupid to look at a child that looks like this and not take them to the
Absolute
hospital?
negligence, and you know what? CFS would take a child away from their original parents for less than that.
And I also want to, that's right, but I also want to make this clear too. I have evidence, and I'm going to be presenting this, that there is massive crime going on in these treatment homes. What this is, they have this ring where they're stealing. The kids go out, they're out all night. The workers are, they're support workers. They have no control over the kids. The kids are out prostituting, doing deals, drugs, gangs, stealing, fencing stuff on Kijiji, and carrying weapons into these places. And I know for a fact, this is how scary it is. They are crime hubs.
Yeah.
That's all they are. And they're taking,
Profit-generating crime.
yes, and they're
Profit
taking
care.
kids out of good family homes and putting them in more dangerous situations.
Well, I wanted to ask, because Cora's here, and I'd really like to hear what she has to say, because we've been talking a lot about the First Nations being affected by CFS, and I think there's no one better to talk about that issue than Cora, if she'd be willing
Cora
to
Morgan.
say a few
Hey,
words.
Cora, come up here, Cora.
Well, I'm the Manitoba First Nations Family Advocate Office. Our office opened in June of this year, so it's been 9 months as of yesterday that we've had our office open. In the course of 9 months, I worked in the area of justice prior to this, and I knew that CFS was a huge issue. And when I first got into the role, and as time has gone on, I've seen how much worse than it actually is.
Yeah.
And there's all these rippling dynamics that, they're just horrifying.
Most people will never see that.
And so, and part of the issue too, I believe, is that the reality for these children and these families is so far removed from mainstream society that people can't even appreciate how really traumatizing and terrible it is. And so, in all of this time, I have, we've intaked over 300 families. And so we have so many people that are trying to fight to get their children home. We're seeing lots of commonalities where, people don't know their rights, and so they're trampled over. Everything is entered into a court process right off the bat. A lot of cases, foster parents have more rights than biological parents, and they have mechanisms to appeal where parents don't. We know that the numbers are higher than they actually are. We are seeing, parents, grandparents trying to get their grandchildren back, and how impossible it is. And then we're seeing, kids that are suffering in the system. In those 9 months, one of the first things that happened was the TRC released their report. And then in the first 5 calls to action was to address child and family services and the overrepresentation of children. We know that there are so many children that are, we have the highest apprehension rate in the world here in Manitoba alone. And so with those sorts of things that are happening, you would think that it would be alarming, and for some reason it's become kind of white noise. Then there was a report released from the University of Manitoba saying that the graduation rates were far less for children in care. Not surprising. And then, different things have happened. We also know that, in those 9 months, there's been 8 mothers that we've found committed suicide as a result of their children being made permanent wards in the system. We see how fast and how the system is designed to keep children and make them permanent wards. And then we also, about a month ago, the Winnipeg Police Service released that, there are 859 missing persons in Manitoba in 2015, and 85% of them were children in care, with 70% being females. We see that all of these released just a month ago as well that, you know, majority of the homeless people are children in care or former children in care. So we know that there's all these damaging things that are happening, and we know that there's a lot of people that are suffering. And so we're trying to do things that, and our office has gone to carryover in Ross. The reason why our office opened was because the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs held 2 community forums where community could come in and share their experience with CFS. And so that motivated the development of the First Nations Family Advocate Office. But of course there was no resources to do it, so every First Nation pooled together money, and me and Cora Wilson were hired. We share a salary. And she's on a leave of absence right now, but you know, all day long, every day, you know, we're hearing we have more and more families coming, and it's impossible to reach all of them. It's impossible to help all of them. And you know, when the Liberal Party said that they could reduce the number of kids to 5,000, I believe it. You know, one of the things that happen, even agencies, people are working in these agencies, they know things are wrong, and they're sending their own clients to us because they want us to come back at them and challenge them so that they can do the right thing. But the system is designed to apprehend and protect, well, apparently protect children.
Yeah, they see.
But when you look at the funding model is $451 million a year to apprehend children and $21 million to prevent apprehension.
Just speaking to that, you know, how does it always come down to an economic issue? Every child should be properly cared for, irregardless of any monetary system.
I agree.
The resources of the human is abundant. And yet, it's broken down to, well, we're going to put some more money, but we can't afford too much. Oh, we have to claw back some money. It's all about the money. When did it become about the money and not about the kids and the families who need the supports, especially First Nations?
Well, 2/3 of the province.
Like Walmart and Staples and Giant Tiger and McDonald's Corporation, thousands upon thousands of dollars. Children that are getting services from CFS, then those corporations don't get any of that money. But when children are under apprehension status, those particular companies, at least in Winnipeg here, make tons and tons of money.
I don't understand
So
that. How do people make money? How do these corporations make money from
Because
CFS?
Child and Family Services has contracts with Walmart, Staples, McDonald's, Giant Tiger, and some other large companies. So that foster parents, but as well as reunification funds, because reunification funds are not given to families as funds, they're given as vouchers for Walmart. And the reunification funds is supposed to be money that makes up for the child tax, even though those funds and vouchers actually don't equal what the child tax is, and CFS keeps that child tax money, gives the family very little. Walmart and all these other corporations make a huge amount of money, as well as they tell parents, don't bring your kids snacks for visits, please get them from McDonald's and Giant Tiger, and we will give you a voucher for that.
Has anybody heard of the movie Super Size Me, which is an old
Yes.
movie, but
Yes.
McDonald's food is toxic.
That's what these children are eating. And
CFS is
CFS
That's
Right.
part of the genocide you're talking about.
Yeah, it is part
It's
of
slow
the
genocide, but it is genocide. By the way, does anybody know about the issue of that the average person in care is given about 7 different pharmaceutical drugs almost instantly, irrespective of any condition that they might have?
Yes, we've got one grandson that he's, as a matter of fact, he's got Asperger's, which is on the autism chain, which is very humorous, as all these autistic people will try to drown us out, but he would go back to his foster home, and if he was any kind of trouble at all, they'd increase his meds.
Yep. Well, I know that CFS often, labels really BS illnesses on mental illnesses on children that aren't mentally ill at all, actually, and they
There's
peg that on
a
a lot
group
of
of group homes that are west of the province. There's 10 of them, and I had this when I was working in justice. There's 2 young men that got in conflict with the law and whatever else. Anyways, they went and stayed in these group homes, and when they showed up to court, they were hardly functioning, and one of them was carrying a towel, and And so his lawyer said, well, why are you carrying that towel around? He says, because this medication constantly makes me drool. And about 2 months ago, a girl calls me. She's staying in one of those group homes, and she says, you know, things aren't right here and whatever else. And I said, just to test it, I said, by any chance, are you on medication? She says, yeah, but just 4. I said, oh, I said, well, that's kind of a lot for a 14-year-old girl. And she's like, well, not really. She says, because my roommate has 9 different kinds of medications. And there's another girl here that can barely get out of bed.
Now, I've heard that CFS brings in more money. Well, not necessarily CFS, but there's more money involved when the child has a mental
They
illness.
do. And
Oh, yeah.
one of the things that
Huge.
happens is that if you take a healthy child and you put them into the system, they're going to want to place them at a higher level so that way there's more money invested in that child.
Yes.
But
My
they can,
grandson-
you can drive that cost up by the amounts of medications that you give that child.
Yeah, see, like
They get $300 a day for him.
see the medication, what happens is that the medication is paid for by the taxpayer. And so the pharmaceutical drugs are increasing their sales by having taxpayer-funded medications pumped into the kids that don't know how to defend themselves against it.
I want to make this clear too, because I'm going to probably get a lot of heat for this, but I'm going to be bringing this up next week. It is, yes, there's 90% Aboriginal children in care, but they're not just Aboriginal, okay? And I have to say that, and I have to say that I work with Somalian children, I work with white children, I work with Filipino children, and they are being marginalized in this situation. We have, maybe they're not, they're not 90%, but their lives matter.
Yeah, the point
And
is, it's
I'm
children.
going to be bringing this up, and I'm going to have to start, you know, I don't care if people call me a racist, I don't care if they, you know, whatever, but the fact is, these are the children that are scare me the most, because they, even Carrie Irvin Ross, I said right to her, I said, what about the other race children? And she laughed in my face. I think you have that on video somewhere. I said, did you see it?
I see now. I was appalled.
I was appalled too, because we have children, I don't care what color skin you are, they're underrepresented.
I mean, when it comes down to what I'm talking about with the Chiefs, honestly, when we're looking at them and we're looking at politicians, the fact is they're all politicians. We should be looking at the individual people in these communities. We should be looking at the children most of all over anything. I mean, one of the biggest, most affected areas are parents. Parents are affected almost as much, more than anyone else, except for the children. So we're talking about, 90% of the children in care of First Nations. That's not a coincidence, but of course, it's all about the children, period. Doesn't matter if it's First Nations, doesn't matter if it's white, doesn't matter. These are all children, they're innocent. They grow up, they're born, they are absolutely innocent, and we corrupt them.
On June 26th of last year, they apprehended my son from the hospital from his mother, who was unstable and had 4 other children in care. 5 months prior to the birth, I had called Intertribal CFS to make a deal with them, to try and cooperate with them, so my son didn't go into care. And what the supervisor had told me was that this was not about me. It had nothing to do with me. There was nothing I could do, and I had to wait for court. So 3 weeks before my son's birth, the social worker came to my house to do an inspection, and the only problem with my house was that there was a wood pile neatly stacked outside. That's it. They accused me of having too much family support, of owning a dog, owning a house, and being single, and therefore I should not raise my child ever. And they were going for a permanent order, and I've never had any CFS contact ever in my entire life, nor has my family, ever. They were going for a permanent order, and I think they said that because they ignored me after my son's birth for 4 months, and then approached me and said, well, guess what? We just want a 6-month order now. Now, they told me that they wanted a permanent order to make a 6-month order look real sweet. So I didn't sign anything. And what had happened from then till now is I've spent close to $10,000, $5,000 on my lawyer, $5,000 on counseling. I've done 7 programs. I've done 6 hair tests to prove my sobriety over the last year. Nothing seems to, make these people want to work with me. Last month they had offered me a 1-year supervision order, but they had to place somebody in my home 5 hours a day, every day. They wanted me to continue paying counseling, which is fairly expensive. They didn't want to help me at all in any way whatsoever. And they wanted to have people come to my home on a regular basis. And I just find it to be disruptive. And I find it to be against, I find them coming into my home is against privacy settings. And it's just ridiculous.
People will profit while they're doing respite work. They will be making money, and that's why they do it.
It's not just
I'm sorry.
respite work. They have done this to several people that have contacted me. And the point of never let CFS in your door. Never. They're like cockroaches. Once you get them in, you can't get them out.
You're right.
And I want to tell you that this support in the home crap, they offered that for me, for my son. What they wanted to do is to take a good look at my home and find something that they could use against me. And what they're doing to you is happening to thousands of people. The problem is people are so scared to talk. But people need to start talking. People need to step it up. If it was my child is voluntarily placed because he's disabled, which is, I feel, absolutely ridiculous. If your child is disabled in any way, it is. If you want help, you have to voluntarily sign them over. Which
a lot of children are taken away that are disabled. But I mean, notice with his story here, there's no violence, there's no abuse. Single. That's why? Seriously?
They haven't been given a chance to parent.
Yeah.
It starts in the hospital.
Well, and they think that, some group home, some, person that is outside of their family, some stranger is going to do a better job than, their own father. I mean, that's so absurd that we have let something like this happen in this province. And this is happening elsewhere, but more in Manitoba than almost anywhere else. And there should be no reason outside of abuse and negligence to ever do this to a child. I mean, when we're looking at children that are taken away because of their parents' broken English, we're seeing children taken away because their parents aren't rich enough. Wealth doesn't come from money. Wealth comes from the family. Wealth comes from love and friendship and family. And the idea that this government thinks that they can dictate what a good parent is when they have destroyed the lives and ended so many of these children's lives in murder, they've gone missing, drugs, gang violence. They think that they can speak better than the parent themselves? That's absurd. This is a government. We're people. And we, the people, are supposed to control the government. But what's happening right now is the government's controlling us. And they think that they can basically force everyone into complete dependence and servitude by just taking away their children and making them a profit margin and putting them into a system that's so abusive and so horrible for the most absurd, ridiculous reasons. And I guarantee you this is a majority of cases, that the majority of cases with these children getting taken away aren't abuse. Okay, so someone's mother drinks a bit too much. So you put them in with a bunch of alcoholic gang members in like a group home? That's how you fix that problem?
Well, and what's drinking too much? A white woman can go out and drink, a few times a month. She can drink while she's on her lunch, while she's at her job. She can go and drink at the spa and the salon. But when an Indigenous woman drinks a few times a month, she's wrong.
My name's Bruce Duncan. That's my wife Joanne. I'm retired district chief with the Winnipeg Fire Department. Worked there for 38 years.
That's me.
Obviously, that doesn't matter to CFS.
You're right, because you're.
They took our 4 grandkids away.
It's all good.
Okay, perfect.
And we've got 2 of them back with my sister-in-law out in Gimli, but we've still got 2 that are out in foster care. I guess one of the main reasons they're out there is because Joanne and I were very vocal when we were foster parents about the way CFS was handling our grandkids, and they decided to make up some allegations that were unfounded and took the grandkids away, and we've been fighting them ever since. We've been through the courts. That doesn't matter to CFS. They just ignore whatever the courts say anyway. So the courts are involved with CFS, the police are involved with CFS. We've seen the whole gamut of what's going on with CFS. We had our kids' birthday party this weekend, and we weren't even allowed to go and spend a birthday party with our grandkids. That's how they're treating this Joanna, myself, and the grandkids. So we talked to CFS and they said we have the power and this is what we do, and we're just telling you people, no, you're not seeing your grandkids. There's no reason, no rhyme, no anything. And this is how they're treating everything, right? And if you do speak up, this is what they do. They talk to you in their condescending tone, and they talk to you, everybody. It's just so aggravating and angry. I'm just such an angry person.
And the kids want to come home. The two that are still out there don't understand why their brother and sister are back home, but they can't be. And frankly, we don't understand that either. And I mentioned that to the CFS worker, and she says, well, yeah, you know, she couldn't really give me a good reason. And I said, we need to have a sit down. We're going to bring Cora Morgan to that meeting because our grandkids are all Aboriginal. They're all treaty, all four of them. You wouldn't know it to look at us, would you? But you know what? And we tell our friends that are very complacent about this whole thing, that if it can happen to people like us, my sister and brother-in-law both have university educations, and Bruce explained where I worked 38 years for MTS, and if it can happen to us, how do other people stand a chance? You know, how do people on social assistance or
And the frustrating thing was too, we went through the courts and it was a waste of time.
You know, CFS will spend $1 million of taxpayer money to defend against somebody, even if they're dead wrong. I know a couple that had their daughter taken away in 2007, and they've been fighting for years. They were cleared of the false criminal charges that were leveled against them. They were cleared of those charges, but in spite of that, CFS still treated them like they were guilty.
Absolutely. I saw one judge literally cancel a hearing for a year, push it a year, because they wanted to go for lunch. They wanted to go for lunch, so they made this woman have to deal with another year without seeing her child. It's absolutely insanity. And you know, one thing I wanted to say is with this election coming up, not everything's going to change. In fact, most stuff won't change, no matter who's in. But I can say this, that NDP government is going to be gone. And when the next majority comes in, which I'm assuming is going to be the PCs, we're going to have to be going up into their face and demanding these same things, and hopefully we could see their promises come true. And hopefully we'll see. I mean, Barbara's running with the PCs, and I wish her well with that. I mean, I know she's been fighting against the system for several years now herself, and it's good to see so many people that have been fighting the system getting in. Now we have to hold them to it.